Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of the Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 27th of August. So coming to the first article, Earth's burning lungs. The context here is with regards to the massive fire in the Amazon rainforest, particularly in the Amazon rainforest of Brazil. I'm sure by now you have all heard of this particular news. This is what is very viral on social media also. So several issues are water of concern here, and it is important also. So coming to the analysis. First and foremost, the issue that is important is that this fire, the forest fires are what are repetitive. Especially in the Amazons also, this is what takes place almost every year. So what is it this year that this is so much in news? The issue is that the fires of 2019 have been like never before. The scale of the fires is what is very, very huge. It is on a massive scale that this particular fire is what has broken in Amazon, in the Amazon rainforest particularly. Approximately 76,000 episodes of forest fires are what have taken place in Brazil alone in this particular year. And the matter is of such global concern that after several amount of persuasion by the global leaders to Brazil, finally Brazil has agreed to send its army in this particular region. So that is the gravity of this particular situation, indeed important. Coming to the second issue which is important is that what is the concern for this kind of a forest fire? Why is it that there is global concern for this? First and foremost, the global concern is because, as the title of the editorial itself is suggesting, the Amazon forests are what are known as the Earth's lungs. Why are they known as the Earth's lung? Because they are one of the biggest carbon sinks on Earth. Already forests on the Earth have shrunk. And Amazon forests are one of the rare patches of virgin forest land that has been left on Earth itself, and they act as a massive source of carbon dioxide, and that is why they are known as the Earth's lungs. If the forests here are burnt, clearly it is going to have massive impact on the greenhouses of the gas, massive impact on climate change. So that is why this issue was what has become a global concern. Another concern is with regards to the biodiversity. Now we all know that biodiversity is also a major cause of concern for the world. It is shrinking, and Amazons are one of the biodiversity hotspots of the world. So if this forest is what is allowed to, if this forest fire is what is allowed to blaze continuously, then biodiversity is definitely going to be impacted, and that is why what is a global concern. Now some causes are what need to be analyzed, that why this fire has broken out, what is some new to this particular year as compared to the previous years. Now basically the first cause that is important here is because of clearing of land for several reasons. Farmers are clearing land for agriculture, industrialists are clearing land for industries. So it is primarily that there has been a deliberate clearing of land also that is taking place. Primarily it is being accused that it is the farmer community who are clearing this particular land for agriculture, and that is why they often set ablaze these forests, and that is what has taken place this year also. Another issue is climatic issue. What has happened is that these forests are what are dry. These are dry because rainfall is what is less than usual because of climate change, and that is why the forests were already dry, and the forest fire episodes are what have resulted in massive loss because of this one particular reason. And the third reason, which is probably the most important reason, is the political reason. Now basically what has happened is that for long it is a concern amongst these countries like Brazil and all the other countries which have the Amazon forests. They have a concern that they are supporting forests which are helping the entire world. If there are forests in Brazil, it cannot be denied that these Amazon forests, being the lungs of the earth, are helping all the other communities. But what is happening is that all the other countries are cutting down their own forests, especially the Western countries, and at the cost of these forests in countries like Brazil, these countries are benefiting. So there is a long time held grudge or grievance amongst the people of these countries like Brazil, of countries like Brazil, where the people felt that if these people are conserving their forests, then they should be compensated from these Western countries for the sacrifice that they are making. You have to understand that every country can go ahead and use its land resources for its own benefit. If conservation is what is taking place in one particular country, then the other country should support and encourage that. That is what has not happened for a very, very long time. And that is why just before the elections, the political leaders in Brazil were openly declaring that if they are brought to power, they come to power, then they will easily allow the cutting of forests and making use of this forest land for development of the nation. And it is primarily because of this rhetoric of these political leaders that this encouraged the people in Brazil and the local peoples who are living in these forests, they got fearless. They will have no fear of law. They thought that if they will burn the forest, they will be encouraged by the leadership. And it is primarily because of this one particular reason that they have burnt more forests than normal. So that is one issue which is being analyzed, and this is again something that is important. Next, what is important are the impacts of these kind of forests. First and foremost, the impact can easily be analyzed from the pictures that are going viral on social media. We can all see that there are dark skies over a city that is Sao Paulo. This is important. This is the city over which pictures are being taken, so this is important. Also, what is important is that the Amazon forests have shrunken historically. Approximately 1,345 square kilometer of this forest land is what has been lost, and this is what is a historic record of loss of the Amazon forest. So that is one impact that has taken place. Another impact is that this is not only restricted to Brazil, this is spreading, and this is what has even reached countries like Bolivia. So this is another important impact of the forest, and definitely the environmental losses are all what we all know about. Next, what is important is the response. Now, response have to be analyzed from two parts. In the first case, what is the response locally? That is from countries like Brazil and Bolivia. First and foremost, countries like Brazil, they did not take it seriously. They denied that no such forest fire is there. It's not such a big issue. Later, when global images, satellite images were showing that the forest fire is expanding at an unprecedented rate, it was then that they finally accepted that okay, yes, there is an issue with the Amazons and there is a forest fire. Thereafter, globally, financial aid was what was offered to countries like Brazil. But Brazil initially refused that it will not accept any financial aid. It said accepting financial aid was what was going to impact its sovereignty. So on that issue, it refused this financial aid. And later, now, finally, when the G7 meet is what has taken place, under tremendous global pressure, it has accepted the aid and it has finally sent its army to fight this particular fire. On the contrary, countries like Bolivia, they openly demanded for help and they accepted it also. Now, coming to the response that is coming globally. Globally, first and foremost, I would like to suggest that if you have an opportunity to discuss about an example for social media movement, that is where this issue becomes very important. If you will know, this was something that was not coming in the media for a long time until and unless awareness on Facebook as well as Instagram was what was created by several celebrities, and that is when this particular issue came to the forefront, and now this is what is very much in news. So that is the first aspect of the global response. And definitely from countries also, even on the G7 forum, this matter is what has been taken place very, very seriously. Millions of dollars are what have been given for aid. So globally, there is a huge response to this particular issue. And that is what is the entire analysis here. Very, very important event. Basically for the environment section, it is something that is very relevant. So please make notes of this. Keep this particular issue in mind. It is important. That's about this particular article. Coming to the next article. Giving wings to better air connectivity. Again, this is what is a very, very important article in my personal opinion. This is an article on civil aviation. Civil aviation industry in India is what is facing several challenges for a very long time, primarily because of the Jet Airways also shutting down recently. Before this, Kingfisher has gone bankrupt. So several issues are what are plaguing the civil aviation industry. The Air India is always facing losses. So that is why this article offers some good solutions, and it is what is important. So coming to the analysis. The first issue is with regards to a comparison between centre government versus state government. Now here you should know that aviation as such is a centre government subject. It is a centre subject, and that is why the states are not focusing on this. The states have a view that this being a centre government subject, it is the responsibility of the centre government to expand aviation sector, and the states have no role in this. But this is what is completely being refuted by the article. The article is giving us an example of the scheme UDAN. Now, UDAN stands for Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. In this particular scheme, the idea is that of regional connectivity. So, if a regional connectivity is what is to be ensured, states have an important role to play. It is the states that will decide whether or not they want an airport, if it is suitable for them, how they can leverage this particular scheme for development of their particular regions. So states simply cannot withdraw from their contribution by saying that it is what is a centre subject. That is what has been talked about in this particular article. Particularly as of now, subsidies are what are given by the centre government only, but states should also contribute to the growth of the aviation industry is what has been talked about. Keeping in line with this, approximately 30 units, that is both states as well as union territories included, have signed an MOU for the growth of civil aviation in India. So this is the first aspect that is important. Another thing that is important here is with regards to some suggestions which have been offered in the editorial for the growth of the civil aviation industry, and this is what is very, very relevant. Replicate these suggestions if a question does come on civil aviation. So coming to this analysis, the first issue is with regards to the ATF, which is commonly known as the aviation turbine fuel. Now basically, in the context of the civil aviation, or for that matter aviation industry in general, this is what is believed to be a very, very capital intensive industry. Huge amounts of money is what does go into this industry. Primarily, a large contributor to this capital intensivity of this particular industry is the air turbine fuel, which is one of the most expensive fuels. Why is this expensive? You should know this is not under the GST. GST is not covering the ATF. Rather, ATF is what is under VAT. States are imposing their taxes on ATF, and it is primarily because of this reason that ATF is what is very, very costly. The excise duty is very high on the ATF. So what the government can do is that taxes on the ATF can be reduced. How the states can contribute is that they can reduce their VAT on the ATF, and by doing so they will ensure that ATF goes cheaper in their particular states, and this will encourage civil aviation industry to shift to those particular states. Some examples are what have been given. For example, the Jharsuguda airport of Odisha is one thing that has been mentioned. The Kolhapur airport of Maharashtra is what has been talked about in the editorial. So if you will give these kind of an example, these kind of examples are what you will frequently use in your answers, you will definitely be rewarded. The UPSC will welcome these kind of answers, and this kind of an analysis is what UPSC will also welcome. So try and come out with these kind of creative answers. ATF has primarily been called as the primary lever which the states can use to increase the aviation sector. So that is in the context of the ATF. The second suggestion that has been offered is with regards to the airport development itself. Now these airports can be developed through several means. One method for this is the PPP model, the public-private partnership model. That is, if that is what is used, the airports can be developed in states also. Also, the state should work with the Airports Authority of India to ensure that airports are what are set up within their territories. Another concept that is very, very important that I particularly liked also is the idea of something called a no-frill airport. This is a common idea when it comes to banks. It means that a bank which is offering basic services, and similarly on those lines, an airport which is only offering basic services is a no-frill airport. For those kinds of airport is something that states can adopt primarily because of land which is a concern in states. Often land acquisition becomes difficult, so in that particular context this is the suggestion which has been given. The third suggestion which has been given is with regards to air services in remote regions. For this several things can be done. For example, VAT can be reduced in remote regions for operating in remote regions. Also, there's something called the VGF, which is the viability gap funding. Whatever is the gap in the funding, that is what can be shared between the center as well as the states. The states must come ahead. Also, the states can offer some non-financial incentives. These are some key words that I'm giving you. Non-financial incentives like free fire rescue programs. Also, free security programs are what the states can offer. So, these are two non-financial help that they can give, new non-financial incentives in the context of fire services as well as security. This is what the state does provide. Then several amounts of cost of the airport are what can be reduced, and this can ensure that airports are opened in states. So, this is another idea, another suggestion that has been given. Rest I have told you. Decreasing excise duty and VAT on the ATF as I just discussed. Ensuring budgetary allocation to airports is another suggestion which has been given. So these are some suggestions. Another suggestion is with regards to convergence in governance. Now basically sometimes what happens is that several schemes are running. Center is not cooperating with the state. First and foremost, this is the area of convergence of governance. Another thing that is important is convergence within departments. For example, health department has its own choppers. Tourism department has its own choppers. So if they integrate, if these departments cooperate, we could have a same infrastructure which is providing functions for both these departments. So that is how a convergence is what should be drawn. So that is what is important. Another important suggestion is with regards to difficult terrain. There are several areas in our country which are having a difficult terrain, primarily with regards to the northeastern states is what has been talked about. particularly in these states, it becomes difficult. Sometimes it takes more than 10 hours to travel from one city in a state to another city just because of the terrain. So if in these cities small aircraft travelers are what are set up, then definitely it is going to boost the economy of these states, ensure development in these states, and that is what will become also a boon in times of emergencies, primarily because in this particular season of monsoons only we are hearing a lot of landslides taking place in mountainous regions of Himachal as well as in Uttarakhand. So these are some areas where definitely there is scope for expanding civil aviation. That is what has been analyzed. Another analysis is with regards to some facts. These are some facts that you can memorize. This is what is going to help you in your answers. You can use these facts as opening statements also. Now basically what has been discussed here is that the penetration of the aviation sector in India is only 7%, and there is huge potential for growth of aviation sector in India, which should be tapped by the nation. Another thing is that India has a potential to become amongst the top three nations in aviation. Also what is important that as of now the tickets that are sold in the aviation sector are only 8 crore. Consider the amount of our population. We are 120 crore approximately, and only 8 crore tickets are being sold. So clearly you can understand that what is the potential, and there is huge scope for expansion. So that is what is the entire analysis here. The article is important for general studies paper 3. That is where this sector, aviation sector and transport, is primarily in syllabus. So prepare it from that particular context. Very relevant article. It gives us suggestions, which is rare. So replicate these points in your answers. So that's about this particular article. Coming to the next article, talking trade with European Union. Now the context here is that there were talks with regards to a free trade agreement between India and European Union, which is not being able to materialize. So in that particular context, this article is what has been written. Coming to the analysis, first and foremost, you should know what are these irritants to reaching an FTA between India as well as the European Union. The first irritant is data security. Europe feels that in India data security is not provided, and that is why European companies are unwilling to come and collaborate with India, because they feel that if once they come to India, their data security will not be upheld. So that is one concern. Property rights is another concern. This is what is not welcomed by European companies. The right to land is somehow something that land reforms, and particularly labor reforms, are what are long due in India. So that is one concern. Another concern is with regards to wine as well as dairy products. Both of these products are what Europe wants. India should allow that European countries should contribute or should trade in both wine as well as dairy products, but India has protectionist measures, particularly for the dairy industry and wine. Otherwise India is not welcoming these kind of products in India. So that is another cause of concern. That is another irritant. So these are the primary irritants that are there between India as well as European Union, because of which FTA is not being signed. Now what is the current scenario? The current scenario is that there is a trade war that is going on. We all know China and US, they have a trade war. Another thing that is important is that protectionism is what is rising globally. Another thing that is important is that in this era of protectionism and trade war, global institutions like WTO are being undermined and bilateral FTAs are being signed. So India should take this opportunity to sign an FTA. It shouldn't happen that European Union signs FTAs with almost all countries and India is what is left behind. So that is what is important. Another thing that is important is the Trans-Pacific Agreement that was to be signed, free trade agreement that was to be signed between European countries as well as US. So that again is something that is not happening anytime soon. That is what has been suspended as of now. The trade and investment partnership is what has been suspended by President Trump. So in that particular context, what has happened is that European Union is looking for other trade partners and India must grab this particular opportunity. So that is what has been discussed. Coming in the context of India's FTAs in particular, this is again important. Now here you should know that India has no free trade agreement with its top trade partners, be it European Union, be it US, be it China, be it the Gulf countries. India does not have a free trade agreement with any of these, and this is one of the pressing concerns for India, and therefore India must take this opportunity and go ahead to sign the FTA is what has been talked about. So this is important. Another analysis is with regards to India being in the grey zone. Now the grey zone is a disturbed zone. Now basically why is India in a disturbed zone? You all know that the generalized system of preferences is what has been withdrawn from India. This is going to impact India's trade with the US. Also what is important is that 20% of India's exports are what are taking place to Europe. So why is it that India is not going ahead with an FTA is what is being questioned in the editorial. New areas that are emerging are, for example, e-commerce is what is rising. So in this particular era, again there is a tendency that trade might further get impacted. So India must explore this opportunity and come out of its grey zone. That is what has been advocated. Now the concerns that India has as method is what has been suggested. This is a two-speed process. Now basically here what has been suggested is that some issues which are amicable, some issues which are acceptable to both India and US, in European Union, those are the ones which should be implemented immediately. And those where there is doubt, there should be a slow progress on them. It shouldn't happen that because of some irritants, all the other areas of trade are also what are blocked. So this is a two-speed process which has been advocated. Another model that has been advocated is the unique model. Now this is a model that is advocated by the European Union, which aims to balance the growth, privacy as well as the standards of a particular country. Similar norms are what are there between India as well as European Union. We both are, the majority of the countries in European Union are democratic. We both follow transparency. There is multi-stakeholder participation. There is regulation for artificial intelligence. All of that is what is there, is what has been discussed. So India must avail this particular opportunity of signing a free trade agreement with the European Union, which is very much in India's own interest. So that is what has been analyzed in the editorial. It is important. The article becomes important from economy point of view in general studies mains paper, also from international relations point of view in the context of relations with European countries, primarily the European Union. So that is how you have to use this particular article. Coming to the next article. Now basically these were two articles which I have clubbed as one. They are both with regards to the functioning of the judiciary. Some points are what we can extract, and I shall be discussing them together. As I mentioned, the context is with regards to the functioning of the judiciary. So coming to the analysis, first and foremost you should know that when emergency was what was implemented at that point of time, it was often seen that the judiciary at that time stood in line with the government. The judiciary was supposed to protect the rights of the people during emergency, which the judiciary failed to do. And till date, it is believed that this is what is the darkest chapter in the judiciary of India. And that is what sometimes the judiciary itself says, that the judiciary is attempting to overcome the negatives that it had done during that point of time. So this is one thing that has been analyzed. Another issue that is important is with regards to Jammu and Kashmir. Now it is being said that probably a similarity can be drawn between the times of emergency as well as the current times of Jammu and Kashmir. Now basically the government is saying that it is for law and order that the security or the rights of the people are what have been taken away or suspended for some particular time. But one has to understand that can this be accepted? Law and order is what is the responsibility of the government rather than a charity of the government. It is not that the government is ensuring law and order, so it is doing some blessing on the people. It's not like that. It's the duty of the government. Why is it that the government, for fulfilling its own duty, has to take away the rights of the citizens is what is being asked, and the protector of these rights, that is the Supreme Court, is silent on this issue is what is being questioned. So this is important. Another thing that has been discussed is about surveillance. I have just discussed an article on this a day or two before, where we had discussed that how surveillance is what is continuing in India. The right to privacy is what is not being maintained by the government. So this is what is completely similar analysis is what has been offered. So let's not delve into this much. Coming to the next analysis, that of free media. This again we have discussed. This issue is again important, that the media is being restricted there, and some respite to the solution or some solution to this issue is what has not come from the judiciary as of now. So that is again something that is being discussed. Free media and open society can never be a threat to democracy is what you have to understand. So this is what has been talked about. Next, the editorial is also appreciating the government for some of the innovative solutions that the government has offered. For example, the government has come up with the solution of landline phones, where people were allowed to make some phone calls to their near and dear ones through landlines that were available in government offices. So maybe these kind of innovative solutions are what help at least ensure that not all the rights of the people are suspended as of now. So this is some suggestion that has been given. Another thing that is important is in the context of the Aadhaar and social media issue. We have discussed this article just a few days back, where we had discussed that should social media accounts be linked with Aadhaar, and how the Supreme Court judgment is that Aadhaar can only be used for welfare schemes. In that particular context, the editorial is discussing that this matter is what is pending with the courts, and this is something that the courts should not discuss about. Yes, it is a concern that social media accounts are what are often used for spreading hate, for spreading fake fake news, that is true. But in this regard, the role is that of the legislative. A law is what is required in this regard, rather than the judiciary intervening and coming up with a law. So, and if the judiciary is even examining these matters, then it is what is resulting in the judicial overreach. So this is what is important in this particular context, and this is the entire analysis that has been given in the context of judiciary. What I personally feel important is the role of judiciary in the Jammu and Kashmir issue. You will have to discuss about this if an opportunity is what is provided. So that is how this particular article is important and relevant. So that's about this particular article, and that's about our discussion today. I thank you all for watching the video.